Have you ever stopped to look for something and then find something totally else that you didn't even know you had or maybe forgot that you had? Hi, I'm Roberta and welcome back to Quilt Crafters Corner. So today I'm looking through some of my stuff and I came across the box of 30 prints that I bought a really long time ago at an estate sale, and I just kind of glanced through them thinking, oh, this could be useful, and I love 30 prints. So it was kind of like a no-brainer. So I bought it and brought it home, and it went into all of what I had at home and it kind of all went into a box, and there it sat. So pulled the box out looking for something, not really sure what I was looking for, but I came across all of these pieces that were finished. These pieces that were, 4 patches and the pinwheels, and I went, oh, I didn't even know these were in there. So I just kind of threw that up here on the design wall thinking, well, I'll just finish that up and get it out of my house type of thing. And it kind of made the box go down a little bit, just pulling this out. So what I was really looking for is I was looking for the 30 prints to do some of those old-fashioned blocks, but then turn them into disappearing blocks, because I'm fascinated with the disappearing blocks, and I hope you are too, because there's so many things that you can do with those, old traditional blocks and then cut them up, or I'm going to show you how to redo them. Because a couple of the most obvious comments to me about the disappearing blocks was, I'd hate to lose all those beautiful points I worked so hard to get. And I thought about that and I went, yeah, that's a really good point. I never thought about that. I never thought, oh, I worked really hard to get those points really nice, really crisp, line up just right. So I want to show you another way to do disappearing blocks. It might take a little more work and a little bit more thought and a little bit of math, but I think it's worth it in the long run. So stick around till the end and you are going to see how nice those points come out just by doing this just a little bit of a different way. And this is more about discovering what we can do to get those really nice points, plus using these blocks, these old-fashioned blocks, in just a little bit of a different way. So let's go over to the cutting table, and I'm going to kind of show you how I constructed and then deconstructed to put back together these really interesting, lovely disappearing blocks. Okay, so here we are at the cutting table, and these are some of the blocks that were already cut in that box, and I just started pulling them out to see what was there and what I can do with it. So the original idea started with a shoe fly. Now this is just a real simple shoe fly, half square triangles, 4.5-inch blocks, sew it together, and you get a really interesting, pattern. But what else can you do with this? So let me show you what a deconstructed shoe fly looks like. And these now are going to finish, this block, if it was sewed back together, is going to finish at 12.5 inches, because these are all 6.5-inch blocks. Sew them together, and then I will get a 12-inch finished block in a quilt, 12.5, if I just sewed these seams together. And I get a nice shoe fly. So deconstructing this, what I did is my dimensions stayed the same for my outside blocks. These are all 4.5-inch blocks, 4.5 half square triangles. But what I did here is I used a 5-inch block on here and here, 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 and here. And then that way just cut them in half in order to construct these so that they get this nice, interesting pattern. Now, you could do a lot of things with this. You could do some stashing here in the middle and, a cornerstone there and get a really pretty block out of this. So there's the shoe fly, and this was a simple block to do. This is a very simple block, and a lot of blocks are. The churn dash would work well this way, and this is, things that you can play with, you know, in deconstructing and making a different block. And this is just with the shoe fly. Now, like I said, these are 4.5 inches. I left my outside blocks all the same. All my outside blocks are the same. Let's see, there and there. Oh, no, turn around, flip it around. But that's not bad either. And see, once again, this changes just how you put it together. And it's going to end up at a 12.5 unfinished, 12-inch finished inside of a quilt. And like I said, this is, you know, you can do a lot of different things with this block. Just cut up and you get a different look. So that's the shoe fly. Now the next one I want to show you, and this one's a little bit more complicated. In fact, this week I sewed and unsewed and sewed and unsewed a lot of these squares until I got this right. And it really comes down to the way these half square triangles are facing, so that everything kind of matches up. You know, you got the greens here, the yellows here, and then you got the reds there. And just getting those to match up. My first set of 4 patches, my half square triangles, I made them all exactly the same, not realizing these are a reverse. These are a mirror image. So I didn't make up, I didn't, you know, compensate for that when I started putting these together. I just started sewing them and I was going, well, wait a minute, this isn't turning out the way I thought it would. So, you know, just little things like that. So I have these still left over and I'm going to figure out what I'm going to do with them, because I might just take them and do something a little different, you know, just add another, you know, something to them, and it could turn out to be a really lovely block. So these are just things that you need to be aware of, especially when you're deconstructing a block like this. So like I said, this is a little complicated because it's got so many colors in it and it's got things going different ways. And the square and the squares are pretty consistent all through the block. So that's not the big concern. It's these here. So when I go to take this and deconstruct it, and what I mean is I take it and I look at it from just what would it look like when I do this. So I looked at that and go, okay, well, that's pretty simple. That's, you know, I got a square and a square, half square triangle, a solid block, half square triangle, solid block, half square triangle. And I go, okay, well, that's all very doable. And then, you know, switching it to up here, and okay, I need to make 2 that are just, it's like a 9 patch, you know, just half square triangles, lay it out, figure out what goes where, and then put this together. I'm thinking, okay, so I need 2 of these and 2 of those. So in doing that, I created these. Now, because these are 6.5-inch squares, my finished block is going to be 12.5 by the time I get these all sewn together. So it makes for a bigger block just by deconstructing and putting these squares together kind of in a different way and just getting a different effect. Now there's the deconstructed shuttle fly. And like I said, it was a little complicated, but once I started breaking it down into something a little bit different, this is what I got. Now, you know, I could play around with this and, you know, once again, do the same thing I did with the other one and create a whole different block just by moving this around. But this is the thing that I really want to show you because this kind of changed the way I was thinking about it. So what if I took my shoe flies and added them to my shuttle fly? And now you have an even more different block than when we started. Now, and I did these in colors to kind of differentiate what's going where. And these, can go together any way you like. And once again, you get another different block. And then what if you took those out and put these in? And once again, it's another different block. And then you've got this is a whole different block. So these, you can really play around with these ideas. And what if you did something just like that? You could add one and add this to the other three, or something like that. Now, this is really intriguing. I love the fact that you can just start to deconstruct these blocks, kind of pull them apart, look at the pieces there, and start putting different elements back together. Create something new. And it's just a interesting way to look at these old-fashioned blocks, these really old blocks that have been around for years, and start to put them together a little bit differently. And even thinking about this a little bit differently. Now, had I done these in blues, this would all kind of go together. And so from that point, it would be a great block. But what if I did this? Just add, let me move some of this stuff out of the way. Let me move some of these out of the way. It's been one of those weeks. Like I said, I sewed and unsewed a lot of stuff to trying to figure this out. And well, it wasn't so much figuring it out. It was more playing with what the opportunities or the options were in putting something like this together. And just, trying something new. And just treating this a little bit differently. And putting these, all together in kind of a different way. So where's my other, let's flip this around. Let's go that way with that. Maybe I can go, let's go this way with that. And let's go that way with that. See, like I said, you can move these all over the place now because I've deconstructed it down to a more manageable size and figured out, okay, well, once I figured out how to, kind of make everything big enough so it's a 6.5, and I know I'm going to get 12-inch squares out of this when they're finished, it just kind of makes it easier for everything to kind of go together. So I'm fascinated by this. I really like the way that this turned out. And I'm, kind of interested to see if this is, something that you want to play with and something that you want to look at in a little bit different of a way. We could do this. Let's put that way. And let's put that up. Flip that around there. And see, now I've got two blocks that are the same. And look at how interesting those are. I'm fascinated by this. I love doing this kind of thing. So let me know what you think. I'd love to hear your comments on this. And these are just real interesting ways to do things and put things together. Now, you've heard me talk about my memberships. I am really excited and thrilled about. I have so many ideas that I want to share with you that are a little bit more in-depth than this. And this is just one of the many ideas that I have that I want to maybe explore further and farther with you and get to a point where you're looking at not only your stash differently, but your scraps differently and how you put things together differently. So if that's something that interests you, there's a link in the description below to join the memberships. Click that link and we will get you on the list, and I can't wait to see you inside. So I hope that was interesting, and I hope that was fascinating to you. I love deconstructing blocks and putting them back together in a different way. It just gives me a unique way to look at things a little bit differently, going, what if I did this? Well, that's what's my new membership, and we're going to take things like this and we're going to do some really interesting things and maybe even discover something that we didn't even know we could do. Unique, different, kind of like what we are. We're quilters. We love breaking those rules and trying new things. So come join my membership. It's down in the description below. So thanks for joining me. I'm so excited that you are here. I hope that this was interesting to you, and come join me again soon and we will talk more about disappearing blocks and unique and interesting ways on how to put our quilts together. Happy quilting!